In 2025, analysts gave American democracy a score of just 57 out of 100, an alarming plunge of nearly 30 points in a single year. Most of us assume U.S. democracy is rock solid, but experts warn it's unraveling in a way we've seen before. Today, we pull back the curtain on that predictable breakdown. Democracies don't usually fall by a single big blow. They erode step by step. Think a slow-motion collapse. Extreme polarization, leaders bending rules, and institutions weakening. Harvard profs say the U.S. is edging into competitive authoritarianism. Elections still happen, but the winners start ignoring the rules. It's neither pure democracy nor a dictatorship. One root problem is toxic polarization. Americans increasingly see the other party as an enemy of the nation. Political rhetoric paints opponents as threats, and that divides society. When leaders use that rhetoric, people follow. After 2020, Trump told crowds stop the steal and urged never concede. The January 6th Capitol attack showed how far it can go. Polarization isn't just argument, it's a crisis. Our media landscape supercharges the divide. Algorithms on social platforms steer us into echo chambers and amplify lies. Studies show thousands of false claims flooded social media during recent elections. Even AI and deepfakes escalate this. Experts warn that new tech is being used by demagogues to flood the infospace. In fact, U.S. attacks on journalists jumped 50% from 2023 to 2024, a sign media freedom is under siege. Meanwhile, U.S. institutions are straining. The executive branch is running unchecked, court orders are defied, and Congress stands by. Over half the recent democracy score drop came from weakened institutions. The pattern repeats globally. Autocrats centralize power. In the U.S., Trump's second term saw unbridled executive power, firing watchdogs, purging civil servants, even shutting down agencies. Critics are targeted and independent agencies weakened. Chief Justice Roberts and others have warned of threats to judicial independence. Courts are under pressure. Officials predict chaos if court orders are simply ignored. Civic space is also shrinking. In just a few months, U.S. policymakers expanded ICE into a militarized force and labeled entire groups as terrorists after a political assassination, rhetoric straight out of Pinochet's playbook. Crucially, elections themselves are under attack. According to Brookings, recent years saw a resurgence of voter restrictions, ID laws, gerrymandering, even bomb threats at polling places. The post-2020 period was marred by disinformation and baseless lawsuits everywhere. Legislatures have redrawn districts to lock in power. One party effectively picks voters by skirting census rules and splitting communities. It's a form of legal rigging that entrenches polarization. On voting day, new laws and tactics have curtailed turnout. Purges of voter rolls and strict ID checks hit minorities hardest. The legacy of these changes? Far fewer voices heard at the ballot box. Even much of the press is feeling the squeeze. Independent media companies fear reprisals. Brookings notes millions knowingly shared false news in 2024, while attacks on journalists jumped over 50%. The outcome is tragic. Trust in democracy is collapsing. A recent survey found over 70% of Americans doubt election integrity, and only a fraction thinks democracy is a good example for others. In sum, the system is losing legitimacy. As democracy falters, polarization feeds back. Each side sees any win as existential. Governing grinds to a halt, all because we now live in separate realities.
Political scientists emphasize these steps aren't random. They mirror backsliding in Hungary, Turkey, etc. The US is unique in speed. Many changes happened in months. But like those cases, leaders are exploiting fear and division to stay in power. So why say predictable? Because by tracking polarization and erosion in other countries, analysts could forecast these pitfalls. It's the same script, stepwise power grab disguised as defending democracy. What to watch next? Experts point to a few big red flags. First, does the executive keep defying courts? Second, will elections still count all votes fairly? Third, are independent media silenced? Each tells a story about democracy's health. It's not hopeless. Levitsky notes that public mobilization and internal splits in the ruling party can reverse backsliding. Recent elections saw some backlash against power grabs, signaling Americans do notice these issues. American democracy is under strain, but only if we ignore history's lessons. By understanding these patterns, citizens and institutions can act. Today's warning signs need watching, because in democracy, silence is consent. In fact, major organizations now outright warn the U.S. is on the brink. Freedom House's 2026 report highlights a growing shadow of autocracy and says Trump's tactics undermine anti-corruption and oversight. The Century Foundation's new democracy meter finds a 28% collapse in 1 year from 2024 to 2025, a drop not seen since the civil rights era. Only elections still scored well. Everything else craters. To summarize, we have a polarized electorate primed by decades of inequality, a president exploiting constitutional loopholes, opposition parties undermining norms, and institutions like courts and agencies yielding ground. Each piece was a warning sign, and together they fit the pattern political scientists warned about. Is it too late? Not necessarily. Unlike a coup, these changes can be reversed through democratic means. Courts have blocked some overreaches, citizens have protested and won back some protections. Elections still offer a path. For now. If that avenue remains open, the slide can be halted. However, confidence is fragile. Many young voters say they no longer trust the system at all. If a majority ever comes to believe elections are futile because of clear manipulation or constant crisis, then the predictable slide could accelerate. Civil unrest or support for undemocratic alternatives could spike. Experts emphasize remedies, stronger voting rights, independent oversight, and civic education. Political scientists also stress the need for a shared commitment to the rules of the game. Ultimately, it may fall to the next generation to insist on reforms, from removing extremist voting bans to restoring checks. It's not too late, but the window is closing. In summary, the predictable breakdown came from ignoring warning signs. Democracy's decay in America followed a pattern seen elsewhere, slowly curbing opposition and concentrating power, all under law. The lesson is simple. Watch the small steps, because once they add up, reversing course becomes a massive challenge.